Hey Baboos, this is Chatty from Chatty, India's first and only beer podcast. Today's guest is Karina Aggarwal. She is the founder director of Gigglewater Beverage Concepts Private Limited and one of the most spirited human beings I have met in my life. Let's head straight to speak with her. Thank you. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Karina and I'm on Chatty. I am the founder of Gigglewater411 and I cheer for beer.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you so much. Actually, supposed to have this podcast yesterday, but unfortunately, Karina met with a little fall and she hurt herself. So we wish her a speedy recovery. She's much better today. And so that's how she's today with us at 3 p.m., which is a Sunday. And like I say, every day is a Sunday during lockdown. And without wasting much time, I'm going to straight get into some questions with her. The first question I'm going to ask her is not about her. I'm going to ask her about her grandmother because I've heard certain things about her grandmom. Karina, tell us what was she like and what did she like?
So my grandmother she was an amazing woman. This is my mom's mom and she was Goan.
Okay.
She was in fact one of the first female radio jockeys in the 60s and 70s on, at that point, what was Emisora, the Goa that eventually became All India Radio.
Oh, how cool is she, man?
Yeah, and she was, I think the story I told you is basically by the time I was old enough and I was in school, so all our holidays, even though I grew up in Hyderabad, because my parents were based there, holidays multiple times a year would be in Goa because my mom's whole family was there. And my grandmother had a ritual. She would, every afternoon was beer time.
Oh, wow.
So she would have 2 pints before lunch. And then every evening was whiskey. And she was very particular about how her beer had to be poured and how it had to be mixed with water. Unless she had taught you herself and she trusted you to make it, she wouldn't allow you to. And when I was there over the summers, I used to be her designated bartender.
So you were the chosen one?
Yeah, also it was sometimes it was a month at a time, but otherwise it was a few weeks. So I took my role very seriously.
Okay.
It was in some ways very interesting because from the color and from the smell, whether I had mixed her whiskey and water right. There were no, we weren't really using peg measures or anything. Obviously. So I wouldn't know if it looked a little lighter than it should have or it didn't smell like she would like it, then I knew I had to put a little more whiskey in or a little more water in accordingly.
Did you get any rewards for doing a good job?
None that I remember, unfortunately.
Okay.
But she would always told us a lot of stories all the time and she was always lovely to be around and she was, eccentric in her own ways.
Okay, I'm not surprised. And but do you feel that somewhere the reason I asked you, I started with that is also to reach the point to ask you that do you feel somewhere she influenced your passion for alcohol and your profession?
I think that would be a little bit of a stretch to say because alcohol or working with alcohol came into my life like more than a decade after.
Okay.
But it's that I think it was always, now when I look back at it, I was like, without realizing it, I knew the importance of the look and the smell.
Flavor and the aroma and all of that, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't tasting it, but I knew what it should be like, like what it should smell like and what it should look like. So yeah, I assume that if I had to say what my first bartending of sorts experience was like, this would really have been it.
It all starts at home somewhere, no?
Yeah, always.
So what's your favorite alcohol beverage? Your grandmother liked beer and whiskey. What do you like? Or does it keep changing?
It keeps changing. I have no interesting answer to that question. But it's one that comes to me very, very often, but there's no clear answer.
Okay. Right now, what are you drinking these days?
These days, actually, I'm pulling out stuff that I haven't gone to in really long. I've been making myself interesting cocktails and I've been, something like the Hanky Panky and the Martinez and a couple of different things by pulling out my liqueurs and my Fernet and all of those things. But for me, what I drink really depends on my mood. Most often, I will feel like a beer or a gin and tonic, especially like when I'm going out or I'm meeting friends. I think those two are the most social drinks there are. But I love, two things I can't say no to or have a very hard time saying no to are sake and good champagne.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Even anything else I'll be able to say no maybe another day. But these two things, if I pass up the opportunity, maybe I won't get it again. I love mezcal. I love my whiskey and my wine also every now and then. So, yeah, it's
definitely all-rounder drinker, everything at different points in time, right?
Okay. And I'm just a lazy home bartender, so I don't bother so much. But if I go to a cocktail bar where I trust their cocktails and I know they have good bartenders, then I'll definitely pick a cocktail over everything else.
Nice. Tell me, how did the name Gigglewater come up?
I started sort of in the beverage world completely by accident. Background was, I just finished my postgrad in journalism.
I was getting to that as well. Good you started saying that. Tell me.
I sort of landed this job with sort of publishing house, I would say. They had a couple of magazines. One was an aerospace magazine, one was a photography magazine, and one was this one. And I was supposed to be working across all. What began to happen was I was sort of suddenly sent to interview brand ambassadors and distillers and winemakers. It was a little daunting because I had no knowledge of this. I didn't even drink at that point. So I decided that I would have to sort of cover my bases by learning and studying and reading as much as I could.
Okay.
And everything I'd studied up to that point, like my background was psychology, English literature, anthropology, journalism, everything was so research based.
Oh my God, that's a long list, man.
Yes, so I approached alcohol also strangely as strange as it sounds, very academically.
Okay.
So more than having the taste and saying, oh, this is really great and I love how it tastes, I just ended up finding out as many things as I could from books and online. And then when I actually met the person that had made it sometimes and they shared the story and I tasted it with them, it sort of all fit really beautifully. It came together very nicely. And that's something that I sort of fell in love with, that whole, and then it just grew from there. So I kept reading and learning and starting. And at one point I decided that I would start a blog because I was coming across really interesting sort of tidbits and fun stories that I realized friends of mine that were drinking these drinks, they had no idea about.
Or what they were drinking, and how they were drinking.
Exactly. So the magazine was a B2B magazine. So it's never like they were going to be reading it. Plus the tone of the magazine was completely different that then would engage normal everyday consumers. So just a little snippet. The idea was that. And when I was looking for it, when I had to decide a name, one of the words I had come across during my research earlier was from Gigglewater.
Okay.
Which is a word that they used during the prohibition in America in the 20s.
Okay.
To denote alcohol, essentially.
Okay.
So because of the prohibition, etc., they couldn't really use everyday words. And Giggle was one of the words they would use to convey that they were talking about alcohol.
Oh, nice.
And it's such a beautiful word. It said so much without saying too much. And that's how I chose it as the name for my blog.
And you also have a 411 something like that.
I didn't translate like that to everyone. They keep asking me whether it's my birthday.
In fact, even I thought, but I know your birthday, so then I realized it can't be that. Kuch aur hi hoga. Some other kahanis bhi hain.
And by the time I thought of moving or getting rid of it or moving it, it had just sort of stuck, so I let it be.
I don't see any reason. It's working well for you, and let people be curious about it. Yeah, wherever it came, it's your imagination and your background, so it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, I guess. That's on Instagram. By the time I decided maybe I'll get rid of it, Gigglewater wasn't available, so I just stuck it.
A perfect day. Don't do anything to it. It's like a perfect drink. You wear so many hats and so many caps of bottles you open. If you had to describe yourself in one word as far as your profession is concerned, what would be that?
I really struggle with that word and I keep hoping someone will come up with it for me. Because I operate as a beverage writer, an educator, brand ambassador, a consultant. It's just a hodgepodge of a lot of different things. go most often as beverage consultant, but it just seems to be the easiest. But I don't have one word that defines or describes.
No, that works. And we'll think of something. Yeah, we'll coin something. Just like the way
if anyone listening to this has an opinion,
please pass it on to Karina. She's all yours for you guys. She'll give you guys a credit also. We'll be here.
And I will pay in bottles, I promise.
You put so many kinds of spirits here. Which is the one that makes you most happy with? Is it beer or is it whiskey or is it gin and tonic or champagne? What's your personal favorite? I'm not talking from what clients.
Like I said, I don't have a personal favorite, but what interests me most, just being the kind of person I am, is one, if I'm allowed to do something fun with it, if I'm allowed to switch it up rather than a format that exists already. So whether it's basic whiskey tastings or whiskey paired dinners or whatever, I'm just really bored of that. So I want to change the format, or I want to change the tone. I want to, in whatever ways. It always depends on the brand or the whiskey that I'm serving, right? It has to be seen. So I love anything that one allows me to switch up normal format, which I know will get feeding off. You always feed off the energy of everyone in the room, and just sharing something new with people that they didn't know before is always really exciting. Lately, it's been, because of the whole trend and the curiosity around gin, there's been a lot of that.
Okay.
And that's always fun because there's typically an element of, cocktails and everyone getting their hands dirty or sharing insights or asking questions because they have tons of them. But I also really enjoy the whiskey events that I do.
Okay.
Because there especially, I think people walk in the door with the most preconceived notions,
like
of either what they are okay to try or having a specific way they feel they drink their whiskey and saying that's the only way to drink it, or people that saying I don't like whiskey and I will never like it. And it's also fun because this is then the audience that when they leave and they're like, wow, I never knew I would enjoy it. Or someone else saying, I've seen this bottle 12 times and I never thought that it would be such a good whiskey that I'm going to pick it up. So stuff like that is just the most rewarding. So I enjoy it.
How do women respond to these sessions? How curious are they?
Always extremely curious, and I think more often than not, the women, I may be biased, but the women have a better palate for picking up notes than men do, because they think sometimes they might not be thinking in a very basic sort of in the beverage language or in the whiskey or beer terms. When they make associations, they make it to sometimes beauty products or cook
cuisine
or fashion sometimes even. And so it's really nice because they manage to convey what they feel about something or notes in a particular drink in very interesting ways and very creative ways. Having said that, in Delhi, when I moved to Delhi about 6 years ago, 6 years ago, actually one of the first few events that I started to do or was asked to do a lot of beer tasting and like beer workshops and stuff like that. And so I did a bunch and in various places with various audiences. And what I realized was that the women weren't really speaking out. So in the sense that, if I asked one of them the opinion, they would always sort of defer to their partner or the man sitting next to them and say, he drinks more than I do, so let him speak. Okay. And then they would come to me at the end and share their opinion, and it would always be a very valid opinion or very interesting.
Very insightful one, I guess. Yeah.
That actually made me think. Also, I was in a new city, and Delhi comes with all these preconceived notions. So I also thought, I was like, what if we take men out of the equation? What if we do these beer things only for women?
Exclusively for women.
Yeah. Are they going to respond a lot more and stuff? And so I started this thing called the Smarty Pint Society.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah.
And we did a few sessions, and the idea was, we sort of built a base of beer knowledge, understanding different styles. But we also had people like a couple of ladies that were there for the first session and subsequently started homebrewing themselves. And then they came back a few sessions later because I said, why don't you come and tell people how you started home brewing? Or I wasn't a home brewer myself, but I connected them to friends of mine that were.
Okay.
So they could ask them where to get the equipment from and where to get whatever ingredients, etc. Yeah, so it was really interesting. It's just that unfortunately at that point I was working alone and I didn't have the bandwidth to plan everything and do invites and make sure that I was registering people and everything. So it became too much at some point.
Yeah, your bar was full actually with work.
Plus, and this was just the idea was just to build a community of sorts more than anything else. I did not follow up on that, but every now and then I keep getting a message saying, "Hi, is this still active?" or "Do I really want to start it up again?" Maybe
yeah,
I will.
You should revive it, yeah. If there's so much of firstly, there's a lot of potential. Plus, you've made a good name for yourself, and if people are coming back after all that, then I guess there is something to it.
They focus a lot more on certain things in terms of paying attention to focusing on the details.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that translates into a lot of things that they do, that attention to detail. And I think even if you don't have a proclivity for cooking, it's just that the chances are that growing up you would be around the kitchen, around your mom a lot more.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a basic understanding of things.
So वहीं से training मिल जाती है more or less. Considering you're not a cook, you don't like cooking.
I have a bunch of, my master plan over the years has been I love to eat. It's really like every time I plan a holiday, the first thing is where am I eating and drinking.
Okay.
And when I finish lunch, it's always about what can I look forward to for dinner.
Okay.
And so my master plan has been to surround myself with friends that cook and especially like chefs. And I think it turned out to be fortunate that I work in the food and beverage industry. So I have a lot of friends that are chefs. So they've been sending me recipes. They've been posting a lot of the recipes. So I put a sort of foolproof one. And then I start with those. So it's been interesting. I made a bunch of different like fish and prawn curries and I attempted butter chicken. I think now the transition of me
not bad, yeah. You're doing pretty well in that front.
It turned out really well. Like I have staunch Delhi folk at home that were very pleased with it.
Okay. You've been in I ask everyone this, that been in the spirits industry, which is pretty much male dominated. And you've been around since 2012. That's a good 8 years. Have you ever felt any kind of bias or any challenges like that as a woman?
I mean, all the time.
Time. Okay.
Every industry has
bias. They have their own, correct.
If you spend enough time speaking to someone, for sure the second person you speak to in a second woman you speak to in an industry will have some sort of a story again. With beverage, it's heightened because one, it's alcohol, and the general taboo of alcohol in India right now. Perception of that also over the last 2 or 3 years have changed so much. But I know that the understanding at the beginning, there were people that didn't understand that I was working with alcohol. Like when they asked me what it is that I did, they didn't understand it. Fine, but then there's also that perception of, there's a certain type of woman that works with alcohol. And all of that. Plus, it is a very boys' club, no matter what we say about it. It is a boys' club because there is precedence there, right? A lot of the people that are in the hospitality industry, they all come from, say, the IHMs, etc. So they know each other. There is a camaraderie there that goes back years. So breaking into this space is also used to be difficult. And then there are all the restrictions of you still have big brands that are wary of hiring women as ambassadors because they are not sure if they can ensure her safety.
From that
they have to worry about where they send her. They might not be able to send her to all the North Indian states that they can send a male brand ambassador. All of those things are still there. And we are going to be there for a while.
Yeah, I guess so. At any given point in time in life or generation, there will be a certain degree of discomfort and challenge.
Having said that, over the last 2 or 3 years, the opportunities for women in the beverage space, whether it is behind a bar, so as a bartender, we have women bar owners that are doing an incredible job. We have some consultants. There are people that are educators in the space or running the marketing for some of the biggest alcohol companies out there. All of that also changes perception changes things. You learn how to behave, how to respect, how to sort of equate women in the space. So I think, over the last few years, there certainly has been a lot of improvement. The way I function is not saying this is the best whiskey in the world or this is the best beer in the world. Please tell me this. The idea is this whiskey has a space in my bar for this reason. This is when I like to drink it. This is who I like to share it with. This is how I like to drink it. Or this beer has this pedigree that comes with it. And so if you like wines of this kind, you will definitely
This is the one you should be drinking.
Yeah. So it's things like that. So those kinds of things, like when I used to do, going back to the whiskey events that I used to do, when I used to walk in, I used to have, that one mostly men, like 40, 50-year-old men. Always, the first thing would be, are you old enough to drink?
Oh, God.
So you sort of
I just came strolling into the park.
And then it's also like to the extent that I've been drinking whiskey longer than you've been alive. What can you teach me about?
Good one.
To be fair, is the truth. They have, in a lot of cases, they have been drinking whiskey longer than I have been alive. But the thing is, what absolves all of this is at the end of the event, a lot of them would come to me and show me their collections or say, I'm thinking of buying this. Do you think I should buy it? I haven't opened this yet. Do you think, I should I save it for something else? It sort of gives you also a feeling that, okay, these people have come around full circle,
Exactly. And the confidence as well,
Yeah, and I know that the next time they won't, whether it's with me or whether it's with another woman that is doing it, I know they won't start with the presumption that she does not know what she's talking about.
Exactly. Your parents, how did they react when you said you wanted to get into this industry?
So because, there wasn't any announcement, so to speak, because it just happened without even realizing it, right? But no, my parents have been amazing, and I think even at times when I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going, they've always been incredibly supportive. And so for very long, I always said, and I told my partner this and my family and whatever, I'm never going to be rich, I'm never going to make money.
No.
But
you're going to be happy with what you do.
Yeah, and I'll get to travel the world because I was getting called to beautiful places. I was getting incredible food and beverage experiences. So I was like, and that's okay for me. Until about 3 years ago when I pivoted and when I started to do different things outside of just writing, that's when I said, okay, there is something there. There is a need for specific expertise in different spaces that people are willing to pay for, that audiences are curious about, and so brands find value in it. So since then it's been a lot easier, which is also when then I set up Gigglewater as a company. So Gigglewater Beverage Concepts is my company, and I work across brands, across like sometimes with importers, sometimes with embassies, etc., whatever, in different ways. It's always interesting because for me, no 2 days are the same, which I love. I'm constantly learning.
I completely identify with that when you said no 2 days are the same. The same goes for me. And I think that's the thing about our industry, whether I've in advertising or now in the beer industry, even I feel the same, and it's very exciting. Truly, every day is a learning, every day is an evolution for us.
Yeah, and if you have that kind of a personality where it allows you, I actually am someone that I like a format, like order in certain ways. So this is not something that I would have, if you had asked me, would you be able to live like this or do this? It's something I would have probably said no to a few years ago. But you're also learning about yourself. You're also learning what keeps you driven. So for me, that, the fact that I want to put good work out there, the Bruxelles, which is an international wine competition.
Okay.
And I think they must have been doing some research, and they read some article of mine, and then they reached out to me and asked if I'd like to be an international jury at the competition.
Okay.
And for me it was a big thing because I was really new into it. So I obviously didn't have the experience necessary or whatever. They said, no, you come and see. And the thing is, it's a really nice format because it's hundreds of judges there. So it's a good place to learn, but the thing is, you're tasting it blind.
Yeah.
But they evaluate you as a judge. So each judge has an individual evaluation because every day amongst typically you're tasting between 60 and 80 wines, say. Oh no, slightly less, maybe 50, 60 wines per day, not a day, like over 4 hours, between 8 to 1 with a break in between. They sort of test you by putting 2 wines in there that are the same.
Okay.
which you don't know obviously.
Which you obviously,
yeah. But then depending on how close your scores were, you are judged. This you find out only weeks after. So they send you like weeks after you come back or whatever. They send each individual judge their evaluation sheet, which basically tells you how close you were to both the samples that you tasted on various days, but also how close you were on an average to the 5 other people you were tasting with. So it evaluates you like that. So if you do badly, you're not going to be called back, essentially.
So it's not like you were judging anything, but more than that, it was also judging. You were being judged.
You are judging.
But in addition to that.
In addition to that, this is not common knowledge, or this is not something that the thing, but if you're invited, and again, they won't specify it really. But if you won't get tend to do badly, they are not likely to call you back. If you're a bad taster or if you're not on the same page as the other people that you're tasting with, or if there's 5-point difference between your first and your second, like the similar blind tasting wine or whatever, then they obviously feel like, okay, this is not a very reliable, then you're not a reliable taster or a judge. So I got called for that, and that was a really great experience because I met some amazing people, and they sort of opened up my world a lot by then inviting me further to events that they organized in their parts of the world. So there were people that were organizing the International Port Wine Day thing in Porto in Portugal, who I met at this thing, and then he invited me there. There were people that were doing something in Greece for a specific wine region, so they invited me there. The Austrian embassy guy, the Austrian wine board guy, so things like that. So that sort of is my ability to be able to travel, to learn more than anything else, because you don't learn, like, if I'm tasting a wine and literally looking at the soil and the vineyard and the grapes on the wines that have made that wine, that's the best way to learn. You know?
Correct.
So that happened. Gigglewater started doing well. I slowly built confidence because I realized that I had enough experience and expertise now to also be able to host events, host tastings. So initially I just did a couple of small ones, and all of those turned out really nicely. So then brands started approaching me to host stuff for them, things like that. So it just sort of grew from there. Also, Gigglewater became like this, at a point when there weren't any active beverage blogs. There was nothing that was dedicated to beverages. The way I do things is a little different in terms of making it casual and approachable. That's always been my aim. I want to make it casual, approachable at whatever level. So if it's at a server level, I need to speak at that level, but at the same time educate them. If it is at a guest level, then I have to understand that if I'm talking about a Glenfiddich, I'm going to have people that are going to ask me about a Macallan. If I didn't have the repertoire of knowledge to be able to compare those two, I wouldn't really be doing a good job. Then I might as well just be a brand ambassador that knows only about my brand and nothing else.
And then just promote it. Correct. Yes.
And the other thing is, so that's why brands will come to me, right? Because they realize that they have brand ambassadors. All of the brands that I'm doing stuff for, they all have brand ambassadors. The thing is that when they come to me or when they want to do something with Gigglewater, the idea is that I bring a sense of understanding to the brand from the outside.
Correct.
It's not coming from
and you know the subject. It's not about just posing there and saying that, drink this is the greatest drink. It's not like an actor standing there and saying that this is what it is, and tomorrow today he's with this brand of whiskey, tomorrow he would be with some other brand of whiskey. He doesn't care.
It's about context, right? I'm not exactly what you said. I'm not telling you this is the best whiskey to have.
Correct.
I'm telling you why I have it as one of the whiskeys in my bar, and when I like to drink it, and when it works best, and who I will serve it to. So it's like that. So, and for me also, I'm very clear about the kind of brands I work with.
Consumers?
And consumers, so I think this had to happen from both ends because
correct,
of how consumers were responding to me and to what Gigglewater was putting out there. Brands came more and more. Also, when they would attend my events, even people from the brand, it was always things where it was always fun. Everyone, including the brand guys, always had fun. Most often, they went home learning something new about the brand that they didn't know before, because I'm very process-oriented. So I will do all of my background that needs to be done before I put something out there.
Over there.
And it's not just I've attended so many of these like boring whiskey dinners. I don't want to do them anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't want to attend them, which means I'm not going to host them. So I need to change the format. So how do you change the format? How do you do something fun? How do you get people to attend that have gone to Scotland and visited 30 distilleries? Why will they still come to you and leave feeling like they've had something new? So all of those things, and it's a mix of being able to project not just about the brand, but also add to it what is happening internationally. What is a trend there? Are we going to see it here? How can I introduce it to you for the first time if you've never done it before? So in order to be able to even think like that and plan something like that, you have to know everything out there.
We are in COVID time and it has impacted positive and negative way and in neutral way to a lot of business and to a lot of professions. How has it, made a difference to your profession?
Actually, one big project I was working on, which was a launch of a new homegrown gin, which would have happened last month, was actually beginning April, so earlier this month. It's completely stalled. And it's the first couple of weeks we were still considering how do we change ideas, how do we do outreach, how do we do information, etc. Now, I think at that time we didn't realize that the world is not going to be the same even when we start up again. So that's going to be a big trouble because the whole F&B community as a whole is really, really badly hit. What's kept me most occupied over these days, work-wise at least, is there are the constant queries for doing Zoom trainings and live actions and sharing knowledge, opinions, all of those things. Yeah, and there are competitions that people have put in place. There are virtual competitions for bartenders, for restaurants and for F&B professionals, things like that. Which is interesting because at least it's keeping them occupied. It's giving people a chance to earn stuff for their teams that can go towards helping with salaries, etc. It's difficult to say whether we will completely recover before the end of the year. I don't think we will. So, but we can still hope.
I feel that, although marketing spends, advertising spends might be chopped off to a large extent, it also opens up new doors of doing things differently. Like you rightly mentioned just now about Zoom calls, Zoom seminars, training workshops and stuff. Maybe that's going to be the new opportunity.
I think in terms of efficiency, a lot of people, I don't work in a traditional office setup, but I know that a lot of people have just realized that the efficiency when they are working from home, not having to deal with traffic and dressing up and cooking in the morning and carrying all of those things. It helps them generally more time for other stuff, but also you get your work done a lot quicker and without wasting resources. True. And time is just one of those resources. So I think, I hope that we will, even when some sort of normalcy returns, I hope that we will utilize these ideas and be open to saying, okay, let's do this over a call, let's do this over an email or a chat or something like that, rather than actually
sitting across the face and saying that unless you sit there, it's not considered to be work. The mentality we Indians have to a large, and I think that will change post this. We don't really need to see each other's faces, and if we have to, then we can do it through a screen. So that's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. And
also, our patterns of consumption will change a lot. With drinks, yes, of course, we're still going to need our alcohol, so there's that mercy. But people are less likely to be going out to bars as often as they used to. They've now realized that they could possibly make themselves one of their favorite drinks at home. The same with ordering food or going out to realize that, wow, I didn't realize I can cook. It's not terrible, so I can do this more often. It's also something that, in the best case scenarios, if you're doing it with your partner, with your loved ones, with your kids, whatever, it's something it's a nice thing to do together. How we consume our food and beverage is definitely going to change.
It's going to change big time,
and I think it will also help brands to realize that now the communication that goes out there,
that will have to change very large.
How you're connecting with your audience and how you're selling to that audience is going to happen.
And on a lighter note, to be honest, if people have been in lockdown, have been cooking and have survived it, then that is certainly good that they can live at home and have their drinks and cook their own food. So they are not in any kind of danger for themselves or for their family.
And you really like the person you're living with if you survive 40 days.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Survive the lockdown, you survive the world. So what are future plans for Gigglewater411? At least this year, post the lockdown.
I really don't know what post the lockdown is. I can tell you what my plans were for 2020 and I can tell you how terribly
We'll have a podcast again, Karina, in 2021 as well. I'm going to revisit this entire thing and let's see where people have gone and how far they've reached.
For me this year, in fact, one of the things I kept saying, because the last 2 years I've been living out of a suitcase. I think last year I averaged about 70 something flights in the year. I'm quite tired as much as I love to travel, and I said two things that were pressing for me this year. One was to travel a little less, so to get a little more time to myself.
Yeah.
And the second thing, which worked out in a very strange way that I did not mean it to at all.
You asked for it and you got it, as simple as that.
Yeah. And the second thing was to work a lot more with homegrown brands, work with brands where there was potential to create a narrative around them rather than just executing one that existed already. Like with Monkey 47, which is the role that I was.
You were an ambassador there, weren't you?
I was an ambassador for Monkey 47, which is a German game, part of the Pernod Ricard portfolio. It was only a few days a month. I know it seemed, for people that follow me on social media, it seemed like a lot more. But I managed to do, all of those things within a few days a month that I would dedicate to the brand. What I loved about the brand was that, there were so many stories, there was a strict aesthetic, and it was up to me to execute that aesthetic or to push it a little more to grow it a little bit. Me and that I was working with. What I wanted to do this year was, and I did that for 2 years, I loved it. What I wanted to do this year was to actually be more integral to the process of building that aesthetic for a brand and building that narrative for a brand, which is what I got to do. So hopefully before this year is over, in another few months, you'll see the fruit of that labor.
We're waiting for that.
We really
span in the works this entire lockdown. We'll just change our perspective and probably we'll do things in a more lateral manner here. You never know where life takes us. So
I think for me, it's also difficult to have this conversation because I constantly realize generally how fortunate I am to be able to, just the fact that I don't need to be working every day in order to sustain myself or the help that I have or employees or anything like that is a very good place to be. And I think one of the things that I'm always extremely grateful for the work I have and the work that comes my way, but one of the things through this is also that we really need to look out for each other and we really need to support and give wherever we can.
Absolutely.
Really, especially for people in the F&B industry, I think it should be, like for me, it hurts that we have, I know hunger is always an issue in India, but just the fact that there are so many people going hungry in such close proximity to you is a very upsetting.
And normal times we don't even notice. We are so busy chasing our own lives and our own hunger, which is other than just eating, that today now when we sit back and we realize that we're all at home and there's so much of misery around. And I think these lessons that we've all learned, they take us forward even after we've all come out and we get back to normal life.
I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can. I hope we learn from this. But I am also slightly skeptical that we'll go right back into being
we also have the tendency of going overboard. No, I didn't do it for so many weeks, so many months. I'm going to do it now. Who's going to stop me? Type. So we have that little bit of nonsense in us. But let's hope sanity prevails. And thank you so much, Karina, for being on our show. And
thank you for listening to me and my journey.
Totally a pleasure, man.
And hopefully we'll meet soon whenever this ends, since we haven't yet.
And we'll meet over prawns made by you. I'm not going to give that up.
You're always welcome for prawns and for beer and whatever.
Everything. Beer, whiskey, and then uske baad jo peena wo pee lenge, jo bhi bach gaya. Thank you so much. Okay, Babus, this is Karina on Cheers Chatty podcast. Karina, please take care of yourself and be careful when you walk up the stairs to your terrace. And be good. And everyone, please stay at home and be good to the world. Goodbye.